upcoming 4 weeks. So what do you have coming for training?
So next 4 weeks is going to be very similar to the last 4 weeks and what I talked about for the last block. So as I mentioned last time, I'm a fan of block periodization. So it's going to be a 4-week block. 3 of the weeks, it'll probably be roughly 2, maybe 3 intervals a week. And then I'll have 1 week where I drop the total volume down, but do probably 4 interval sessions that week, just to fit in a little bit of a bigger block of intensity. Like I talked about last time, the interval sessions, I like to do progressive intervals, start off below threshold, finish off at race pace, and try and get a decent volume during the interval sessions. So progressive interval, short breaks, and trying to get 45 plus minutes of volume in each interval session. So a couple of those in a standard week, and then 4 or so of those in my intensity week. And the volume I'm looking at hours per week is like the 3 weeks where I'm doing more volume, less intervals. I'm trying to get 25-ish hours, maybe a little bit above that on the biggest week. Still trying to mix it up, bit of roller skiing, bit of running. I still think it's a long time to the season, so it doesn't need to be too specific. If you like biking, do a bit of biking. If you like other stuff, then keep a bit of that in the mix as well. That's so fairly similar to the last 4 weeks.
Question for you on the intervals. So you're saying that you're starting out at like a little bit below lactic threshold, and then you're kind of increasing intensity up to race pace. What length race pace are you, like a 21K race pace, 10K race pace?
Yeah, like a sort of, or for me, like a 15K race pace, so like a half-hour duration. So like, but just so you can feel that you're definitely pushing above lactate threshold, that sort of pace, so that you can feel your muscles definitely starting to burn. So that, because I feel like doing that way allows you to get the highest amount of time with a high heart rate. If you start off too hard and you start getting lactate early, then I feel like you tend to get heart rate drop off. And for me, I feel like the biggest benefit I get from training is when I have as a bigger volume as possible with high heart rate. And for me, I feel like that's the easiest way to get as much total time with high heart rate as possible. And so if I could, I'd smash out all of them above lactate threshold, but that ends up with me just getting really tired and going slow by the end.
So question for you on that. My understanding is to increase your lactate threshold, you actually want to be a little bit below your threshold, like for most of your interval time. Is the purpose of this interval to increase your ability of your body to, process and use lactate, or is it more of like a skill, like VO2 max type of effort?
So it's a very good question. And what you want to work on depends a little bit on your strengths and weaknesses. So one of my strengths is that my threshold is very high compared to my max. So if we're talking about VO2 max, then if I do a test on the treadmill, then I'm quite good at my threshold's pretty high, so what I've got to work on is more increasing my VO2 max. So I do more work on that. Whereas if you feel like your weakness is maybe your threshold speed as a percentage of max, then I would agree with you. It's probably worthwhile having a bigger focus on a slightly lower intensity and maybe increasing the duration of the intervals. But for me personally, I'm trying to work on more VO2 max type stuff because my threshold is such a high percentage of my max, and to be able to I think probably the most important for distance racing is your threshold speed. But for me to be able to increase that, then the easiest way to do that is to increase my VO2 max, and then that allows me to be able to push my threshold a bit more as well.
So maybe for someone who is more amateur, you know, increasing threshold would be more of a focus. And then someone who's more advanced, you know, VO2 max might be more of the focus. And then just one quick follow-up on that is, so for VO2 max, is that something that's a quicker adaptation that maybe like even like more an amateur could focus on closer to like race season, start working more on VO2 max, or does VO2 max really take a long time to get those adaptations so that it's something that you really want to start working on during the base period?
No, so definitely what I do is I do longer volume intervals through the summer, and then as I get closer to the race season, it'll be shorter, more high-end VO2 max type work, and I think that's good for more amateurs as well. But I also think for an amateur, work economy is probably the easiest way to get better at skiing. And to increase your work economy, I think the sort of race plus minus race pace and doing as big a volume as possible is probably the best way to improve your work efficiency. Because that's specifically roller skiing I'm talking about there. If you're doing running stuff, then maybe looking at something different. But like, I think, yeah, a lot of amateurs, the biggest way to make gains isn't necessarily VO2 max or threshold. It's more technical and work efficiency. And then I think hitting race pace type work is probably the best way to do that. Maybe slightly over race pace as well.